Okay, let's go. Let me sort my hair out. So, hey everybody. If you remember me, my name is Sophia. Today, Trey is not here, sadly. He is busy, but I have an amazing guest. We have Kyle here, who is one of the hosts, right? You're one of the hosts because you have co hosts of the Knockout and Three Count podcast. Welcome, Kyle. Nice to see you. How are you doing today?
Not too bad. Appreciate you having me. Yeah, that's right. I am the host of Knockouts and Three Counts. I do have a couple of co-hosts. It started with a few different people than the people you see on the screen now, but yeah, now it's me and Jordan and Corey.
Awesome. And how old is your podcast?
We're around 7 years old now.
Nice.
I started in so whenever WrestleMania 33 was, so I want that's 2016 or 2017. I want to say it was 2017. So we're 6 years old.
Wow.
Um,
Cool. You guys
Yeah,
have
I
been
started
doing
after going to 33.
nice. Is wrestling what made you get inspired to start a podcast? Because I know that you don't only do wrestling, right? You guys do MMA as well. So what kind of like inspired you or like kicked that fire within you that was like, I wanna do a podcast? And I think at the moment it's quite common. A lot of people are doing it right now, but 6 years ago it wasn't something that everyone was doing.
So for me, it was broadcasting is something I've always wanted to do. I grew up watching Baseball Tonight and all those kind of things and Sports Center and watching that on loop, and it was something that I always liked doing. I started working with kids with disabilities and things because I have cerebral palsy and Crohn's disease. So I worked with them for a little while, and that kind of changed my path. And then so my shoot job or my full time gig is at the post office, and I was working midnights at the time. And back then, we used to all go to a bar to watch the pay per views. We would all link up there, and I went to WrestleMania 33 completely by myself in Orlando, and went to everything by myself because I was working midnights and nobody could really link up schedules. And then when I came back from Orlando, my buddy Devin, who was one of my original four co-hosts, had his own show, and he asked me to come on there. And then through doing that, I also learned that he was into UFC and MMA and all that stuff as well. For me, I've been fighting since I was 13 years old. I took my first boxing fight when I was 13. I have a purple belt in jiu-jitsu as well. So I've always dabbled in both, and I watch both intently. And so I feel like even though they're very similar, pro wrestling and MMA are very similar fan bases, although the people that cover it usually aren't able to cover both really well. You'll either see one where they're big pro wrestling fans and they just like MMA and don't know a lot of the stuff, or maybe somebody who's MMA and they don't know as much about pro wrestling, so they get annoyed by a little bit of the stuff. So I wanted to talk about all of it, and at this point, luckily, we've gotten to talk to boxers and bare knuckle fighters and UFC and Bellator and Ryzen and all that, as well as, like you said, some of the people from WWE and abroad as well.
Have you been watching wrestling for a long time?
Oh yeah, my first memories of it were when I was about 6 years old. I remember, um, matter of fact, I still have the VHS here at the house. But I remember SummerSlam '98. It was when Triple H and The Rock had their ladder match, and Austin and Undertaker at the Garden. That was the first real pay per view I remember watching like that. And then after that, I've always been a fan of it since. I always kind of figured I'd fall out of it, but obviously that didn't happen.
Wow. So when you started your podcast initially, did you ever think like you would be able to interview some of the big names? Because you guys get some really incredible guests on your show from MMA. I keep on thinking to say UFC, but
It's
it's
all
not
good.
just UFC, right? So from MMA, bare knuckle fighting, which you just mentioned, and everything on is there an umbrella term that we can is it MMA for everything outside of pro wrestling?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, you could just say combat sports, but
Okay, yeah, that's good.
yeah, like I mean, so no, I never thought that any of that would happen. To be honest, like the first big guest I remember we got to interview. Um, Ironically, it's coming up again the week after WrestleMania, and I'll be there again. If you guys are here in the States, in the Michigan area, check out Astronomicon. But we went there. Me and Devin were there, and in one weekend, I got to interview Booker T, Bruce Pritchard, and Eric Bischoff all in one weekend, and wasn't ready for that. Didn't have any prep for that. Wasn't ready to go on any of that stuff. And it's still one of the coolest things I've gotten to do. I've gotten to interview Eric a couple times in different scrums and things. I haven't got to have him on as like a regular guest on the show, but like that was like really one of the sparks for us. And then as far as like big guests, man, like some of the places that this podcast has taken me is just dumb. Like I just got we just got credentialed for the Royal Rumble and for Survivor Series. So I was there and in the press conference for there. Shout out to bodyslam.net, who I do some work with there too. But as far as guests for the show, um, the fact that some of the biggest sports legends that I grew up watching as a kid are big supporters of our show is crazy to me. Like Darren McCarty from the Red Wings, they were on their run with the Stanley Cups when I was a kid, and he's a big supporter of ours. Like I mentioned, Booker T and Bischoff, and but like you've said, like some of the people that I get to talk to, it's crazy. Like we just had Chris Van Vliet come through, who he was one of my big inspirations for the actual like interview game of things. I just like the way that he does things with interviews, and that was somebody I've learned a lot of stuff off of watching his stuff, and I enjoy watching his stuff. But to answer your question, no. And the crazy thing is some of the people outside of wrestling and combat sports that we've gotten to have on because of this show are crazy. Diamond Dallas Page was another one. He walked up, saw our table at Starcast, and so you guys got a podcast. So you gonna interview me, bro? And there was there was no prep. There was no, oh yeah, this is what we're doing, blah blah blah. Like, it was all off the seat of my pants, and like now the people we've gotten to have on there, it's crazy.
I love everything that you guys do, and it's really, oh my god, because you guys are like in your own lane, you're doing your thing, you're getting the guests, you don't get involved in drama, you're never like bitching on the internet, which I love, because I see so many people just like with that negative energy in, I don't know anything about combat sports, but in the wrestling space particularly, there's so much like just so much weirdos on the internet, like just hating for no reason. And I think what you guys are doing, and that's why I really wanted to speak to you, because I think it's so dope. Like you guys are killing it. You're getting all the guests. You're not involved in drama. Like I think you're a great representation of doing it. Like this is how it should be done. You should be this way. You shouldn't be on the online just fighting with people on Twitter all day long. Like that's crazy to me.
And the problem is we talk about it a lot on the show too. I feel like combat sports and pro wrestling, they're like two of the most toxic fan bases that you could really be involved in. And I couldn't agree with you more as far as the bitching that you hear about on the internet. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, man, like I think what gets misconstrued, I guess, in the pro wrestling sense, I'll talk about that part of it. Like, obviously, most of us that cover this stuff have been watching it for a long time, but let's not get it twisted. I also come from the combat sports side of things. Like, if you've never been in a cage or in a ring and never been punched in the face, you don't know. If you've never been in there and trained and never, felt the bumps and bruises and know what it's like to have that happen, you don't know. The same as, even though I've been watching wrestling, and at this point, like you said, I've gotten to interview quite a lot of people. Like, I've never wrestled a match. I've never taken a bump. I've never wrestled in front of 80,000 people. So the way I see it, I mean, how the hell am I going to sit here and talk like I know better than somebody else? But what I do know is that being a fan, as long as I have, that's the vibe I always wanted to have for the show. I always wanted it to be, um, we're fans of pro wrestling, and I have a little bit of insight when it comes to the combat sports thing because I've been around it since I was 13 years old, and I'll be 32 this year. So, I mean, I've not been competing actively all the time for that, but I mean, I've been around it in some form or fashion for a lot of years. So I always like to keep that kind of vibe to it because, like you said, it just seems like in 2024 everybody wants to bitch and complain. Like perfect example being AEW versus WWE. Like if history has taught us anything, if AEW is thriving and WWE is thriving, then wrestling as a whole is going to thrive. And look at what we just saw last night on Dynamite. They sold out in Toronto. AEW's got a crowd. Everybody wants to talk shit about open crowds and all these things. They sold out, and I don't care what you say. That crowd was singing along to Edge's song. What we saw between him and Christian, Edge, Adam Copeland and Christian, that was dope to see. And I feel like if people could get back more to being like, hey, I'm a fan of this at heart. Yeah, there's things that I don't like, but get back to enjoying it. I feel like wrestling as a whole would be a better spot.
In terms of okay, can't get my words out. Professional. I think the word is profession, like being professional. As a podcaster or a host of a show, you have to be professional. You know what I mean? I think that is something that you guys do so well without having. You didn't go to college to study media or like do a radio course or anything like that. So has it been a challenge for you to kind of step out of that profession? I can't say professional, being professional, and just kind of like give your own opinions, but like in a sleazy way. I love that you guys, like, you're extremely professional, and I think someone else, like you mentioned, you just interviewed Chris. He's a really extremely professional, right? He's somebody 100%. That you can say is legit, right? And you guys are very professional, but you haven't had that like media background, right? You just kind of started as friends and let's see how it goes, right? So has it been a challenge on navigating on like, step crossing the line to becoming an evil asshole on the internet?
So, okay, like in our original four, so the original four to our show was me and my buddy Devin and my buddy Kyle and my buddy Kevin. Now, so Kyle and Kevin, life kind of, took them other ways. We're still tight. We just had Devin's wedding here late last year, and we were all involved in it. But the thing is, man, it is hard because here's the thing. At first, like you said, so many people are doing podcasts right now. Okay. And so because everybody's doing podcasts, anybody can grab a microphone and hit a stream button and then everything, and do your thing. But there's a difference between being able to do that and making sure that you I don't have notes. As far as when I say notes, I don't mean like I'm gonna like question because first of all, I think that that's like the most annoying style of interviewing, and I don't think that anybody really wants to hear that. Like I feel like when it's more of like a conversation, I feel like that's when it's best. But yeah, there's definitely something to that, especially like with the stuff that we've gotten to do with WWE recently, like because you don't want to go in there and then ask a stupid question or not have anything at all. And then, you go in there and you're like, well, we let this guy in here to ask questions. And then that's the stuff he asks. And like, that's one of the biggest things I've seen through like doing like Starcasts and, going and getting to work with WWE or doing stuff in MMA. Like a lot of people don't do enough of their homework. And I'm not saying you need to like have like a 3 pages of notes, but I just think at a certain point, like when you start wanting to get bigger guests and do things like that, like if these people are going to give you the time of day to do your stuff, like you need to make sure that you're on point because they've done a lot of interviews. And I've learned that people remember the experience that they have on interviews. So like if you don't do your homework and don't do things the way they should be done, people remember that and they don't want to do it again. So like I always have prided myself on being somebody who tries to do that, whether that's in the combat sports side of things or in pro wrestling. And I always try to find like stuff that's like out of the way. Like for example, Mecha Wolf from NWA and AAA and all that stuff. Him and I met in Texas when I was doing stuff during the pandemic, and like we met and over our love for Metallica, more specifically my dad's love for Metallica. And so with that, you know, we went down a whole diatribe of like his favorite Metallica songs and things. Like I feel like too many people are so focused on wanting to try to get the hot button question that's going to like go viral and all that stuff. But I feel like you get a much better interview out of just kicking it and, you know, having an idea of where you want to go with it.
6 years in, do you still get nervous even now with like some big names? You know, it's MMA. I know nothing about MMA, but some of the guests that you guys get, I'm like, holy, how did you manage to do that? You know, do you get nervous at all still today?
100%. Like, you know, talking to Chris was really cool because Chris is, like I said, somebody that's an inspiration for me. But like, some of the people we've gotten to talk about in fighting, like I just got to do this episode a few weeks ago. So we were talking to Devin Smith before he fought for the LFA championship on UFC Fight Pass. Devin Smith is the godson of Rashad Evans. Rashad Evans, when I was 16 years old, my birthday present was to go to Atlanta to watch him fight Chuck Liddell at UFC 88, and one of my teammates was fighting on the card. So to have him on the show on my platform 16 years later, and I didn't know that was going to happen. I had no like prep. I had no questions. I had no anything. So to get to do that, yeah, there's a little bit of nerves, but it's also, like you said, at this point, it's kind of like, well, I'm going to do it. That's the same as when I was in the press conference and I was talking with Gunther at Survivor Series. Like nobody was really asking questions, and I figure one thing I've learned is like if you don't open your mouth, nobody else is going to do it for you. And as far as getting some of those guests, like to be honest with you, 90% of it, I mean, to be fair, I would say a good part of it is you need to make sure that you need to make sure that you're, you know, making relationships with these people that you talk to, you know, because people will vouch for you. Like for me, shout out to my guy, Bulletproof Troop from NWA. You know, like he's made the link for me with a lot of people in NWA. Like I just got to have Aaron Stevens, Damian Sandow on the show. That was because he hooked that up. Kerry Morton from NWA, he hooked that up. You know, Alex Taylor from NWA, he hooked that up. You know, or like my buddy Megaran. Shout out to Megaran. You know, I met Megaran when he was performing at Madison Square Garden for the G1 Supercard for Ring of Honor New Japan. And then we met at StarCast, and like he's the one that linked me up with getting AJ Francis on the show. AJ Francis Top Dollar was just on the show. And you know, I think a lot of it's relationships, but at a certain point, you just got to shoot your shot. At this point, the worst they're going to do is say no. But that's why my advice to anybody that would want to start that is I would start with like your local scene, like your local indie scene, like build yourself up a following through, you know, interviews with people on the local scene. Or if you're doing the combat sports thing, go to the local fights, interview the local fighters and stuff like that. And then as we've kind of grown throughout time, those relationships and the names that we were able to get through shooting those shots, you know, helped us to get other people on there.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question. What advice would you give to somebody who might be starting a podcast today on combat sports or professional wrestling and really has no idea where to turn or where to go, you know?
Get good equipment, number one. Like get good stuff and make sure you kind of know what you want to do. Like you want to talk pro wrestling, you want to talk MMA, that's cool, but I would say have an idea of how you want to do it. Like I wanted to come at it from a fan's perspective, but also from MMA. Like I've been around it, like I said, so also having that perspective of knowing a little bit about what's going on. I would also say, I mean, look, man, there's so many things in 2024 that can make your stuff look 100 times better. Like if you use like the Fiverr app, like all my layouts I got done from them, like getting a legitimate intro. Like people are always like, oh, I don't want to spend money. Well, if you're not willing to spend money on yourself to like, you know, boost what you're doing or invest in what you're doing, then I don't think that you're really going to be able to get people to really invest in what you're doing either. Also, by getting some of those things, it also makes your job easier. Like, I mean, they got the AI stuff now. Like, there's an AI thing. You just drop your episodes in there and they make clips for you and you can go back and clip them. You know what I mean? Like, you just got to look and find different things. But I guess that would be my advice. Have a real idea of what you want to do, have an idea of how you want it to look, how you want it to sound, and just do it. Like, ultimately, to be honest, it's like Chris said on our show, like, your first, I don't know how many episodes are going to suck, but like, find what you liked, find what you didn't like, find other people who are maybe doing it bigger than you and see if they can help you out. Like, I've had a lot of help from people that were further up than me.
Don't be afraid to ask, right?
Yeah, and then that's a big thing too.
Definitely. I think that's the biggest challenge. People are scared to ask for help.
And that's the thing. People don't want to ask, but I mean, there's a lot more people that'll be willing to help you than those that won't. I mean, there's plenty that are assholes, but I also come from the school that it's like, I didn't have I had to figure out a lot of this stuff on my own. So if I can help you not have to maybe deal with a lot of the stuff that I do, I think that comes from my background with working with kids and stuff. But at the same time, if I can help somebody else, who knows, maybe that person shoots up the ladder quicker than I do and they get somebody that I'd like to get. And I'd be like, hey, can you help me, do whatever, talk to whoever or whatever it might be. And like, again, like I said, a lot of those relationships have resulted in me getting people that I wouldn't have had connections with otherwise.
Is it safe to ask, do you have a preference in terms of what you enjoy covering more? Is it MMA or professional wrestling?
I like both, to be honest. And I know that's a vague answer, but like, I like both because fighting for me was something that really changed my life. Like I said, I grew up with cerebral palsy. Boxing was what I started with, and I never had planned on doing that in the first place. That was because my mom, got tired of seeing me get bullied and stuff. So for me to be talking to and interviewing some of the people that I do when it comes to combat sports, and then like commentary, like we talked about earlier, like when I can do commentary and I have the fighters come back to me and be like, hey, you really did a good job. It was great to have somebody who knew what was going on inside the cage versus somebody who's just commenting on what they're seeing. And then wrestling, like you mentioned, I mean, I've been a fan since I was 6 years old. So the thought of covering pro wrestling and having some of these people on my platform is insane. And then when you add to it, like the stuff with WWE, like when I went to Royal Rumble, I was there because WWE hooked it up and had given me tickets where I was sitting and all those things. That doesn't go lost on me. The fact that a podcast that I started in my buddy's kitchen could have anything to do with helping me do that on a scale like that, that's insane.
Do you wake up, I mean, like, and think, holy shit, like, this was never, I mean, I think ultimately it was your goal. Like, you wanted, but maybe you thought.
Of course, everybody wants to do that, but you don't think that's
possible,
a tangible
right?
goal.
It happens, but it's not going to happen to me. And it's actually happening. And, you're sitting here and you're thinking, holy shit, all your hard work, all the grinding that you guys have been putting in for like 6 years straight, you know what I mean, has started or is paying off. You're getting the guests, you're going to events, you're actually doing commentary as well. You just did your first pro wrestling commentary, but you've been doing commentary for MMA, right? Is it difficult? Because with your words, I mean, like, obviously you're live, you shouldn't make a mistake when you're speaking, doing commentary, because people don't want to hear a commentator who can't
talk.
speak. Yeah, exactly. So, and you know, we spoke earlier. You never went to like any sort of like school to learn any of this shit. So you kind of
No,
just
other
learned.
than like English, I took some basic like college stuff, and I took broadcasting in school, but like I didn't, I never went and got a degree.
Degree. Yeah,
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 no.
yeah. So how did you get into commentary?
That was something I always wanted to do. But at the same time, never something that I really thought I could do. At the same time though, like I was able to, so basically one of the local fight promoters around here, shout out to Matt Friendo. I'll be on commentary again for him the week after WrestleMania. On pay-per-view on Spectation Sports for Lights Out Championship. Stay tuned for the main events for that stuff. But yeah, so they needed a commentator, and I'd always wanted to do it. And he said he needed somebody last minute, and I was like, well, I'll do it, And I did like 4 or 5 fights, and I did like the first 4 or 5 fights, but now it's turned into a good partnership. It started with that, and now like I also call the fights for Big John's MMA in Michigan as well. And then I might be doing some kickboxing stuff coming up here as well. So like it started with just somebody saying they needed somebody to do it, and it's something I'd always wanted to do. Definitely a little nervous, especially because but it's cool starting at the local level. Well, I wouldn't say local level because I get I've gotten to call some big name guys in the main events that have either fought in the UFC or will be fighting in the UFC soon. But like getting to do it on the local level, there's not always as much like notes necessarily that you need to know the same as you do like when you're calling like a UFC or like one of the major promotions. There's not as much to find on the fighters, so it helped me to cut my teeth in a lot of ways. But I've been around the MMA and boxing scene around here in Michigan for over 15 years, so I know a lot of the gyms, I know a lot of the fighters, so that helped as well. But I just love being in the thick of the action. Now, pro wrestling was a lot harder to do. I've only gotten to do that once so far. It's a little bit harder because you want to be entertaining. You still need to be calling the action. And then, like you said, to get to do that with somebody like D'Lo Brown of the Nation of Domination, then you don't want to sound like a dumbass either. So, yeah, there's definitely a different vibe to both. I feel a little more comfortable with MMA only because I've done more of it. But now that I've gotten to do wrestling, I want to keep doing that too.
Is there any sort of preparations that you need for your voice? Because being a presenter, I think that you have a voice of a presenter, like like a presenter's voice. You have that voice. Is there a like any sort of like preparation that you need to be able to kind of get that radio presenter vibe voice? Because not anyone can do it. I mean, that being said, there are some people who do commentary who are horrendous, in my opinion.
There's definitely there's definitely there's definitely people who aren't as good. To be honest, I didn't really have a lot of preparation, and I'm still figuring out as I'm going. Like now I've been doing it more, so I know a little bit more of what I should do, what I shouldn't do, what sounds good, what doesn't sound good. As far as the voice thing, I've always heard that I had a voice for radio. So I've had multiple people have said that. I've never thought so before I started doing this stuff. It'll be interesting because you say I have the voice of a presenter. I might be doing some ring announcing soon. So,
can you ring your R's though?
Can I what?
Ring your R's. Like the when they
I'm not that good at that stuff. I'm probably, if anything, I'm probably gonna be the guy that's better with like the one-liners, like throwing like stuff like in front of things and stuff. But I don't know how well I'll do at the ring announcing thing, but we're gonna try it and find out. But as far as commentary, I've always heard that I had a voice for those kind of things, but again, to be doing that in something that I like and have enjoyed for so long, like it doesn't go lost on me that's something cool. And for me, like even with the show, it's great what we're doing and I love what we're doing. Make sure you guys check us out. We're live Tuesdays and Thursdays at 9 p.m. That means I'll be live later tonight. But with that being said, I enjoy what I'm doing, but I want to get to the point where like the show or like broadcasting or whatever that manifests itself into looking like, I want that to be, like my regular job.
Mm-hmm. Would you ever do something like a TED Talk? Because you mentioned that you have had challenges in your life and you have I can't pronounce it, but cerebral palsy and
Mm-hmm.
Crohn's disease, and something like you have managed to kind of like achieve so much. Not saying that that would prevent you from doing that, but say
It
like
can.
a young teenage girl or boy, might think I might struggle later on in life. I would look at somebody like you and see you being able to accomplish going to do media at WWE, and them like literally facilitating it. Or like interviewing some of the biggest names in pro wrestling and MMA. Like you're a huge inspiration to many people. And I think something like TED would be, I know that they travel around, so you should definitely, and I think with that, you have to reach out to them. But like TEDx Detroit, they would do something
I
like
actually
that.
have a
And
friend from here in Detroit that just did a TEDx talk.
I think you would be great because you can say, look, I've managed to accomplish so much. And I've had an incredible mother who has really pushed me to, not let my challenges define my life. I'm able to, and maybe you can, I don't know your story, but you can see maybe it's because of mama being like such a soldier that was like, this is why I am the way I am,
Oh,
And
I would agree with that 100%. And it's funny you say that because that's something it's always been one of my goals. Like I want, growing up with that stuff, you didn't have a lot of people, like they straight
yeah,
up told me I was supposed to be in special ed classes and all these things, and that I wouldn't be able to do this, that, the other. I used to take a whole page to write my name, couldn't cut with scissors, couldn't tie my shoes, couldn't write my name, couldn't do any of those things. And so for that to happen and for me to be doing what I'm doing, I wish I had found this maybe a little earlier, or maybe I had went into it right after school. But again, like we mentioned, dealing with those health issues, I kind of wanted a break from all that stuff. But yeah, man, I hope that the things that I do, Lord willing, I hope that it inspires somebody else that they can, do what I'm doing or do something else like that. Like a lot of people say they don't care about that stuff. I do. I really, one of my life's goals is to leave the world better than I found it. And I mean, if some kid or somebody, well, I've literally had it happen. I shit you not. I literally had my brother-in-law, he drops off the CO2 tanks and stuff to the hospitals, and somebody who listens to my show was talking about they wanted to start a podcast, and he told them that I was his brother-in-law, and then he tells him, oh my God, I listen to those guys, and like he was one of the ones that helped me want to do that, like here in our local scene. And so it's like stuff like that, man, is like what makes me want to keep doing it. Or I was talking to Sabu of all people in Vegas, and some random guy cuts in a conversation with me and fucking Sabu, some white kid from Detroit and Sabu, and you cut in the middle of us. Oh, I know you from that show, whatever. And I'm fucking talking to Sabu, dude. Like that's just crazy.
Yeah, so and now people are starting to recognize you. You guys are getting freaking sponsors. A lot of people would dream to get their show sponsored. Do you know what I mean? I think something like I would love to see you on a TED just speak about, your life and the challenges that you face, and you have not let them define you, which is incredible. I have a few more questions. One of
Sure.
them is, who is your favorite wrestler? Can I
My
and
favorite wrestler or favorite wrestler I've interviewed?
no wrestler of all time? I would say I have two questions.
Mhm.
Favorite of all time and favorite currently.
Okay, favorite of all time, Stone Cold, hands down. Stone Cold's my guy. He was my first favorite as a kid. I've actually been able to meet him, and I met him a couple different times, and he couldn't have been a cooler dude. Like that's definitely one of my goals is to interview him at some point. But he was definitely the guy for me growing up because I grew up right in that 1998 to 2001, era was when I started watching. And I mean, Austin 316 was and was the biggest thing that there was. Actually, I've actually got you probably can't see it, but it's the skull from his last match as part of my sleeve because I was there at WrestleMania a couple years ago.
Oh, that's okay.
So that would definitely be favorite of all time. As far as favorite right now, my favorite to watch is Will Ospreay.
Okay.
Will Ospreay is my favorite to watch. As far as in the ring, as far as what I'm enjoying most, I mean, I think like most people right now, I think the Bloodline story and Cody Rhodes and all that stuff is really the story that everybody's looking into. And again, with me being an Attitude Era kid, The Rock being involved doesn't hurt that either. But I think as far as in ring right now, Will Ospreay is my favorite to watch. The Bloodline would be the favorite story, but as far as my favorite of all time, has got to be Stone Cold.
How about female wrestler?
Favorite female wrestler. So, ironically, I just met her last year. My first crush as a kid was Lita for sure.
Nice.
So like and go figure. Now I've got a bunch of fucking tattoos now too. But yeah, I would say as a kid, my favorite probably would have been Lita or Trish. As far as who I think is like the best of all, I mean, favorite right now, I guess would be right now, I would say would have to be maybe Rhea Ripley.
Same.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I like the character. I've met Rhea, and Rhea could not have been like a more personable person. Like, I hate to crush anybody's bubble, but she could not have been a cooler person. And so I would say Rhea, but I think there's a lot to be said for what Trish and Lita did. Somebody like China. There's a lot of people that I could name, but as far as like favorites, I guess those would be it.
Who's your favorite guest that you've had on your show? Can you narrow it down to one person?
So one of my favorite ones is I don't know if you guys know the band over there, but Five Finger Death Punch. My buddy Justin James is somebody I've trained with since I was 14 years old. He's one of the coaches over at Extreme Couture in Las Vegas. And he trains Chris Cale from Five Finger Death Punch. My dad and I went to one of their shows, and my dad crashed the car on the way there. And we still went to the show. And so Chris was listening to that show with my buddy Justin and said, wait a minute, so you guys crashed the car and you still went to the show? And yeah, we ended up going, and he came on the show. We chilled for like about an hour or so. And then when they came into town, not last year, but the year before, he brought us backstage, gave me the jersey from the Tigers. Like, it's actually still in my studio now.
Wow, that's so cool.
So as far as coolest interviews, it would have to be maybe him or like I mentioned, Darren McCarty from the Red Wings is a big one for me. As far as wrestlers, DDP probably. Just because without him, kind of like putting me on the spot and having me do that interview, I don't know that I would have done a lot more of the other ones that I've gotten to do. But like ones with him or guys like Rob Van Dam or Booker T or, some of the, we've gotten to have, like, I got to have Jimmy Smith on the show when he was the commentator for WWE, but I knew him because of his time with UFC. So a lot of those were cool. Like the Rashad Evans one is definitely a top one for me now too, just because of me growing up, being at that fight and getting to have that. So that's my big goal, is I just want to continue to do things that like the kid version of me would be like, holy shit, look what I'm doing.
Yeah. It is really amazing to see what you're doing. And, I'm always like watching your show and like just kind of like supporting in the sidelines, and you guys are killing it. Honestly, you really are. You're doing so well. and it's incredible to see, and it just goes to show, like, hard work hard, and you will achieve your dreams. And it's amazing everything that you're doing. So I want you to tell everyone where we can find you. And you said you're calling I don't know if anyone from Detroit might be listening. Who knows? Is it going to be in Detroit?
So this fight's actually going to be in Muskegon, but you can watch it on pay-per-view on Spectation Sports, April 13th. I'll be doing commentary for Lights Out Championship, and then April 27th, I'll be on commentary for Big John's MMA. But I also, a little birdie told me that you might be seeing some more of me in the pro wrestling game as well. And you can find me at Detroit Knockout. You can find the show at Knockouts and Three Counts Podcast. We're live Tuesdays and Thursdays, 9 p.m. Eastern. You never know who will be popping through there. With WrestleMania coming up here soon, obviously we're going to have our WrestleMania preview. I can tell you that Lindsay Snow, who also happens to have tattooed me too, that's another fun one, getting tattooed by one of our guests. But she will be on the show. She's also part of the Big Blood Sports show that's got Shayna Baszler from WWE on it as well. Nice. She should be coming through, hopefully, with Ayla Fox, who is representing her, also the wife of AR Fox from AEW. I just had Sam Alvey before his Karate Combat Heavyweight Championship defense this Saturday in Playa del Carmen, Mexico. You can check them out. Shout out to Karate Combat. Working some stuff out with PFL as well, and Bare Knuckle FC. We've had both of the female champions. Shout out to Christine Faria, who they just announced her next fight, and Britton Hart as well. And like I said, you can find Knockouts and Three Counts on all of the on YouTube, on TikTok, on Facebook, on all those. You can find us on the socials at KO3C Pod. So there's always stuff coming out there. I'll have more clips of the show with Sam. And like she mentioned with Chris Van Vliet, there's a lot of good stuff in that show as well.
Wow. Thank you so much, Kyle, for coming on. I really appreciate it. And I really enjoyed having a chat with you. It's been overdue. And I can't wait to see what you guys have in store for 2024. Guys,
likewise.
Sophia. His name is Kyle. I love wrestling. He loves wrestling. Do you love wrestling, Kyle?
A little bit.
A little bit. We love wrestling, guys. This is me signing out. We both love wrestling. I have really enjoyed talking to you, and I can't wait to speak to you much more this year, definitely.
I'm with it. When are you coming on our show? That's the question.
Yeah, you just let me know. I'm definitely down.
I'm with it.
Awesome. Let me know. So, your socials, I will write them somewhere so everyone can find you. So if you just send me everything, that will be awesome. And yeah, that's it.
Cool. I can send you our link tree and all that stuff. You got to let me know. I mean, I know the time difference is a ton, but like, that's the only thing I was going to say. Otherwise, I mean, you could come on the show tonight, but I mean, it's different.
What time is it?
It's like late our time, so it's like 8 p.m. our time. That's why I say it's different.
I'll be sleeping.
No, I feel it. No, we can do something. We can set something up to where it's like pre-recorded or whatever. And
yeah, that'd be awesome.
We can set something up that way, and I can send you our link tree and stuff. You got to send me the link so I can tell people where to check it out.
Definitely. Send me a picture of you so we can use it as a thumbnail.
Oh yeah, you got it.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. Once again, I really had so much fun.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for the time. Thanks for hooking it up. I love the fact that we can get some exposure across the pond. Hopefully,
I'm you guys' fan. Literally, I love what you guys are doing. It's amazing, honestly.
Means the world to me because, like I said, so often it seems like you do this shit and nobody really pays attention. So yeah, to know that people are enjoying what I do and enjoy what we're putting out, that's a big thing in and of itself. Because I mean, honestly, if I told you all the people that we talk to, like I literally was just talking to Greg Gagne yesterday in the DMs from AWA and shit, and he's asking me, "Oh, what's your reach and what's this?" I'm like, man, you don't even know shit about a reach.
Yeah, that's true.
So hell yeah, man. I'm with it. Like I said, anytime you guys need me for anything, let me know. And we definitely gotta link something up to have you come on the show. Maybe we can tie in some picks or something for like our WrestleMania show. I can maybe link up with you before we do it ahead of time, and then but just plug that in and play it on the show because I use StreamYard too.
Okay, cool. That sounds amazing.
I'm with it. So let me know what you need me to send you. You just need my link tree and a picture?
Yeah, basically.
All right, cool. I can do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
See ya.
I love wrestling.
Check us out.
And you love wrestling?
We love wrestling? Watch that shit, bitch.
I'm even rapping. My name is Naomi. If I love wrestling,
You love wrestling.
then we love wrestling.
Then we love wrestling.
We love wrestling.
We love wrestling.
We love wrestling.
We love wrestling. We love wrestling. Yeah! I told you.
Oh, we love wrestling.